Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Friday, January 31st, 2025. Um, the last day of January, so we're through the first month of 2025. Um, let's see now. Well, of course, going to give people a chance to come in. Of course, a friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. All right. So, with that being said, of course, I saw an interesting episode of Lupin the third, the first season of Lupin, in which a rich girl who was on her wedding day was trying to get the upper hand on Lupin and Fujiko as they were trying to steal a gem called the Eye of the Nile, as it were. Um, so that was pretty interesting watching her kind of play her game. It turned out that she hid the actual, there were actually two fakes that she fooled him with until they realized that the real jewel was literally in her cat's eye. So, so quite an interesting twist on that part. Um, you know, so let's see where are we at now. So we got 2.5 minutes, so a little longer here. And again, another friendly reminder, of course, if you guys haven't already, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here um, grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my abilities. So let me just try doing another couple more invites here. Try this one more time. It's a misery, love's company. We could build a factory on fake misery. Frustrated. All right, so we're coming up on 4 minutes now, so I guess I'll talk about now what's on top of it. So we do have a couple things to talk about news wise. You guys know we've been following the Neil Gaiman story for a while now, as there's even more fallout coming amid the um, sexual allegations. We're going to be looking at our old buddy Avi Green. He put up another article on the situation. We're going to go over that article, give our own 2 cents. Also, for those who, of course, grew up in the '80s like I did, and of course, for those fans of Filmation's He-Man series back in the '80s, there was a passing in the last month, was just announced today, but apparently a month ago, about around the 20th of last month, John Irwin, who provided the voice of He-Man, Prince Adam, and Beastman, among many other characters in the 1983 Filmation He-Man series, and was an active member of of Filmation. Passed away last month at the age of 88. We'll talk more about that a little later, and then of course we'll have the wrestling wrap up, get all caught up on all the latest in the WWE, AEW, TNA, Ring of Honor, get you prepared for tomorrow's Royal Rumble, and then, of course, finishing off with This Day in Niche History. With all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get ourselves started now? So let's get into the first article we're going to go over tonight, which is in regards to Mr. Gaiman. And we see more fallout from the allegations here. Alrighty then. So as I said, if you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, let's get into this. So, fallout grows from sexual abuse allegations against author Neil Gaiman. Article by Avi Green, published today. All right, so recent developments indicate that multiple allegations of sexual misconduct have been made against Neil Gaiman, leading many of his employers to sever ties with him, which we've talked about recently. I think the most recent one being Dark Horse. I guess I'll add a few more newspaper op-eds about the now disgraced comics writer and novelist Neil Gaiman. For example, here's a writer at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette telling what he thinks of the news of Gaiman's sexual assault. Now, mind you, remember we had it's funny how we start off with Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh, of course, was the home of the late Ed Piskor, who had his own set of skeletons that people decided to bring out into the light. So this is from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette article. So, suggestively, few of his friends have come to his defense. He has also not threatened to sue the writer and magazine for libel, which would seem the natural response to being accused of such actions. Granting the inevitable ambiguity of the evidence, I think Shapiro's story substantially, and in parentheses here, and possibly completely true. Let's see. Now here's Avi responding to that. Based on his social media behavior, which could get pretty questionable at times, it would be surprising if Gaiman had alienated more people than one might think over the years, which could explain why his buddies are deserting him. And then I guess now back to the article here, the Pittsburgh Post article. That leads to the second question. Why do people care so much? Why are thousands of very distraught and very angry people blasting him on the web? He's just one writer in a world filled with them. I think his admirers feel betrayed. One common complaint is that he called himself a feminist and supported trans and LGBT people, and seemed on the side of all that is good, yet was living a secret second life where he abused women. Now, here's the thing. This, believe it or not, that's not a shocking revelation at this point, because over the last few years that this has been a thing where we've had all these we've had all this wokeness and Me Too and male feminist and virtue signaling and all that. What it's turned out that all these quote unquote male feminists, it goes back to the whole idea of Saul Alinsky and his book Rules for Radicals, right? Look in the mirror, see the evil that you do, and then point at the other guy and say, no, he's the one who does it. So, it's been a common theme that time after time after time, a lot of these guys who claim to be male feminists and all this and are trans and LGBT people, this, that, and the next thing, turn out to be total frauds. Oh. Now this is Avi speaking now. Now, of course, I just gave my own 2 cents there, but my own commentary. But now we got trying to see if anybody. All right. So now continuing on here. Unfortunately, there seem to be quite a few liberals of this type who take up specific causes and follow certain playbooks because they assume that backing said causes will literally shield them from any consequences of wrongdoing. Yeah. Sometimes it's almost like the idea of how do you get away from the mudslinging? Sink deeper into the mud. How do you get out of the dangers of the swamp? Sink deeper into the swamp. Kind of what seems to be the reasoning here. As the past decades made clear, it's certainly not so easy anymore. All that aside, what quote unquote good did he actually side with or promote? Only leftist causes, and some of his writings hinted at that. And again, we've seen how Avi has in the past made the argument that Gaiman's true personality, true persona, was probably evident in his writings from going back as far back as the 90s to his Sandman series. Anyways, back to the Pittsburgh Post article. Shapiro reports that Gaiman grew up the child of parents who are at the top of the Church of Scientology. Its founder insisted that children be punished as if they were adults, and the list of offenses for which they could be punished seemed to have been great. Quote, if a child laughed inappropriately or failed to remember a Scientology term, unquote, she writes, quote, they could be sent to the ship's hold and made to chip rust for days or confined in a chain locker for weeks at a time without blankets or a bathroom, unquote. Unquote. Someone who knew the family. Now that is a little extreme for a child. Locking them in a chain locker, and not even being allowed to go to the bathroom. Yeah, that would probably mess up anybody. But someone who knew the family then said that his father put him in a cold bath and, quote, drowned him to the point where Neil was screaming for air, unquote. Whoa. Most people would consider that child abuse. If not all people. You can see how a childhood like that could create a man who needed to feel that he was the master, the one in charge, and not the one being drowned in cold water. It's an uncomfortable fact, but for the grace of God, in parentheses here, or for the accidents of the universe, in parentheses, again, depending upon what you believe, obviously, go we. You can also see how he could live his life as two different people. He could genuinely be the writer people loved and the man who abused women in private without seeing any contradiction. It's almost two shades of skin there, right? Or two coverings of skin, two skins on one man. That's one of the saddest part. Okay, so this is Avi speaking again. That's one of the saddest parts of this whole affair. He may have been abused by the cult, but did not recognize growing up why it's also wrong to abuse the fairer sex. Nor did he understand why it's the same as the abuse he experienced. As a result, how can we feel sorry for him when he failed to learn any lessons from his experience and apply them universally? There's also an article from the Irish Independent which notes that. So now this is now they're quoting from the Irish Independent article. Let's see. And again, if you haven't already, if you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and so this is from the Irish Independent article. Gaiman, 64, has long railed against hyper-masculine society in novels such as American Gods. Okay, now back to Avi here. If he was equating all masculine behavior with crudeness, that's ludicrous. With the right upbringing, men can also be polite and gentle in relations with women. Something tells me American Gods is not a novel I'd want to read. But then I already said some time ago I'd rather not read any more of Gaiman's resume anyway. Suffice it to say, his online proclamations of being a feminist have come back to haunt him. Now back to the Irish Independent article, of course. In 2014, he began a tweet about Emma Watson speaking at the UN by addressing himself, quote, as a feminist and human being, unquote. Which people would now probably find that debatable, but whatever. At least in the context he's trying to make everybody believe it to be. Before posting a photo of himself wearing a hashtag he for she. Likewise, Gaiman's public words about, quote, believing survivors, unquote, now take on a slightly different taste. Of course, because now he's the one who, if he was to actually follow his that rhetoric, he'd have to, if somebody accused him of malfeasance, he'd have to acknowledge that, yes, I did that. But let's see. On the one hand, there's something very disappointing about a situation in which feminist men and allies turn out to be not quite that. It's galling to hear that a man who roundly describes himself as one of the good ones then turns out to be not quite so good. Hence why on some levels you should take people at their word until they prove otherwise. You still ultimately judge people by their actions. Right? When all is said and done at the end of the day, what do their actions say about them? Many women know this exact type of man. the performative virtue signaling feminist ally who is versed in terms like Darvo, which I just learned more about the other day, of course, from the article the other day, and I was just talking to RJ too. He was telling me that actually that term's been around a lot longer than I was initially led to believe. So, and quote unquote gaslighting, the man who positions himself publicly as a voice for women, this type of man prides himself on being the type of man who hears and sees women as they want to be seen. You see, that's also a thing though. Women don't need men to be their voices. Okay? Women can speak totally for themselves. Women have brains. They can use them. Like some men, some women do not always use their brains wisely. But that goes for either gender. You have some who use their brains well and others who don't use their brains so well on both sides of the gender line. Sometimes, and not always, these men turn out to be the worst offenders. And which is something that I talked about earlier, right? You know, it's funny how at the end of the day, a lot of these people turn out to be hypocrites. Yep. Well, this is Avi speaking out. Yep. But then the article resorts to blurring the difference between certain figures for the sake of liberal talking points. As now we're back to the article here. We tend to vilify quite rightly the men who are outspokenly and bizarrely misogynistic. Your Andrew Tates and Donald Trumps, who make no bones about who they are. But when about those men who claim loudly and vociferously to be feminist, the wolves in sheep's clothing who tell us aloud that they are one thing while being the very opposite behind closed doors. And they, in fact, somehow worse. Again, I'm not going to even comment on Donald Trump just because I have my own views on him, but some of you would not. So now, here's Avi's take on what was just said there. Tate is a bad lot, as noted before, but Trump, no solid evidence has turned up, and this is yet another blatant attempt to smear conservative figures like Trump for the sake of it. That doesn't help matters at all. At least gay men won't be able to do the same at this point. It'd do a lot better to just focus on left-wing men posing as feminists, unquote, a term which perhaps would be best left for women to identify as, not men. Yeah, I mean, I would be in total agreement with that. I'd be in total agreement with that idea there. Then, from Feminism in India, which is another, I guess, news source, they tell the following, but have something awkward to say about the Sandman series. Now, mind you, let me just make feminist from India. So that's obviously an Indian, as in Asian Indian, the country of India, obviously. Feminism in India. So there is obviously a possibility, because he said something awkward there, but there could be something that's lost in translation there. So we'll be fair on that point. Gay men's fall from grace is disappointing. So this is from the This is from the Feminism India article. Gaiman's fall from grace is disappointing, but not surprising. For a long time now, self-proclaimed quote-unquote feminists, from activists and artists to authors championing progressive politics in their texts, have been found out as serial abusers and rapists, or arpists. Such well-loved figures like Taram Tejpal, the founder of Tehelka, and actors James Franco and Justin Baldoni, to name a few, are everything that a male ally stands for in theory. They are creative, brooding, and charismatic. They say the right things and align themselves with the right politics and movements. But when the facade slips, it is made apparent that they are not the heroes we made them out to be, which is another reminder to folks about the idea of why you don't meet your heroes, right? Because that facade can come crashing down if you're not careful. As throughout anyone's life, we've seen countless anyways, in Gaiman's famed Sandman series, fans have often aligned his persona with that of a magical Sandman, the ruler of the realm of dreams. The Sandman is always fair and righteous and does not have a blot or as much as a smudge in his character. He is the savior of the marginalized and the downtrodden. For long, Gaiman was considered as larger than life as his fictional creation. Not only a magical fantasy world, Gaiman had also built an enigmatic persona for himself, one that sat right with his fans, young and old. And now Avi is responding here. Avi's response to what was just stated in that article. I think it's very disputable whether Morpheus is quote unquote fair and righteous. The way he intended with the way he interacted with Lita Hall, just plain causing her husband Hector to disintegrate, was insultingly unsympathetic. And as I asked earlier, does Morpheus have the right to name her infant son Daniel? On which note, Weird Lita wasn't written actually doing this herself the moment Daniel was born. After all, as the mom, it's her right and business to name her child. Also, there were a few times where Morpheus dealt with offenders most underwhelmingly, like in the 14th issue, letting the serial killers attending a convention just slip away without seeing any arrest by authorities. Is that righteous? Quote unquote. And it goes without saying that if Morpheus was written giving the obese rapist murderer pleasant dreams, even going so far as to depict the child victims forgiving the monster, that was wrong. And Gaiman should be ashamed of himself for writing such a defeatist scene. The article continues. Now back to the article he's, of course, referring to. Okay. And again, feel free to comment and or ask questions. And I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Also, if you can, if you haven't already, please like and share the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated as well. Anyways, it is so back to the back to the article he's referencing here. I guess from Feminism in India. It is now when the truth is out in the open that readers are faced with the murky task of reconciling with the fact that their favorite author, the one who gave them fantastical masterpieces like Coraline, American Gods, and Good Omens, is actually a predator who has systematically abused his power to exploit vulnerable women. And at this time, therefore, it is once again important to reevaluate the age-old debates around separating the art from the artist. Can we, as readers and lovers of fantasy, ever read his text without the shadow of the fact that he is an usurper of power, looming large over the pages? Can an ocean at the end of the lane or a Coraline ever be read, revisited, or discussed in isolation without remembering the fact that the author who created such beloved literary magic is actually an artist? Hmm. As lovers of all kinds, of all things literary, it is common knowledge to us that banning books, however murky the politics and character of the author is a failed project. Not only does this act promote censorship and the conservative right-wing rhetoric of silencing the literary voice, it is also an attack on free speech. Instead, free speech with consequences must be the way ahead. The reader is not a senseless child who is to be kept away from the text by force or by law. The reader is an aware individual who must go into the text with full knowledge of the author's politics, opinions, and character history. Readers of Gaiman must be made aware of his horrific actions, and they must be encouraged to read the text, hitherto progressive and unmarred by the author's own life, in light of the allegations made against him. Readers must consciously and critically engage with the text, knowing full well that this author is a violator, abuser, and artist. And this is Avi responding to what was just said. Get to this next part here. I think what readers should do is take an objective view of the stories to see if they're really the masterpieces, quote unquote, the mainstream press originally made them out to be. Because when I did some research, the stories I went through were far from the quote unquote classics his one-time apologists were making them out to be. And there were telling hints he was using the books he wrote as a platform for leftist ideologies and that don't hold up. If Gaiman hadn't been found out, chances are quite a few cultists would still be defending his works as unchallengeable masterpieces, and worse, would probably do so very cavalierly. Not everything takes a scandal to make people ostensibly come to their senses. But there's still quite a few cult-like audiences who will only reconsider if and when a once revered author is discovered to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's got to change if it matters. If it matters, of course, it doesn't do any good to ban books, but nobody should be encouraged to waste money on the writings of a bad person who wasn't the talented scribe the mainstream was making him out to be. Now back to the article here. From the business point of view, Gaiman's literature and their screen adaptations have made him extremely famous and rich. The author has profited immensely off the sale of his books, fandom merchandise, and the deals with production houses for the cinematic adaptations of the same. Readers must henceforth be encouraged not to purchase his books firsthand from bookshops, or publishers. Instead, if they wish to read them and not support the author, they should find ways to do so that do not monetarily help the author. Borrowing and retelling of text and films, in this case, are options to look for when one wishes to boycott the author. It is imperative to keep in mind that reading or consuming media from a creator who had been called out for their misconduct in ways that do not monetarily benefit them is not, quote unquote, supporting the creator. I'm guessing this is. That's still the article going there. All right. One can consume the media and literature to critically inspect the creator's art and how that conflates with their person and life. In fact, critically engaging with Gaiman's text at this time with the conscious knowledge of the violence perpetrated by him might actually help readers process and understand how abusers often mask their violent tendencies using a veneer of progressive political consciousness. It might even help dismantle preconceived notions about the author's greatness and expose him for he really is. So I guess they forgot to put in the word who he really is. Now this is Avi responding to that. I guess this is getting somewhere. Like I said, what should be done is take an objective look at his writings to see if they actually reflect his dark side. Unfortunately, there's quite a few that do, or are just plain overrated and time wasting. Just don't encourage actual fandom or somebody as pretentious as Gaiman turned out to be. And then so I do need to step away from the computer for a quick moment, so I'll be right back. But what I will do is I'll put some music on while I'm gone to keep you guys kind of entertained. I'll be right back. am back now, so let's continue with the article here. So, and then from the New Indian Express, a columnist who previously spoken about the scandal last July and takes issue with Amanda Palmer's role. Gaiman, like actor Justin Baldoni, currently believed to be behind a targeted smear campaign against his co-star Blake Lively, whom he allegedly sexually harassed, claimed to be a feminist and queer ally. He was not in practice, but neither was Amanda Palmer. There's something a little boring to me at this point about powerful, charismatic men who come unmasked, which triggers, intrigues, and provokes me here or what triggers, intrigues, and provokes me here is Palmer's role. Perhaps I speak largely empirically, but the buffer zone that surrounds predatory men almost invariably contains enabling women who defend the man in question, bring him sacrificial lambs, and have their own twisted power games in motion with other women. In this case, Palmer herself has been noted by people who encountered her in queer and artistic circles as sexually predatory towards young women herself, as well as financially and emotionally exploitive. Gaiman may be a garden variety monster, but Palmer is certainly not an anomaly either. And women like her are monstrous too. And now here's Avi's response to that article right there. Sadly, there are women who've done terrible things, just like men have. As I pointed out earlier, I made the same point earlier, and they too must be held accountable for whatever role they had in these scandals. It'll remain to be seen what impact the scandal will have on Palmer's career. Here's also another item from Splice Today by somebody relaying a personal experience at a convention, and somebody who it appears is not fond of him, regardless of whether the writer is liberal. Here's from this article from here's this article now from Splice Today. I didn't know Gaiman was chasing tail. No, Gaiman was chasing tail, let alone any of the specifics that have been alleged. But for the past 16 years, I've considered him a pious BS artist, who's a bit too crafty about getting his way. I had a big reason for this and a minnow school of smaller reasons. The big reason was that Mr. Feminist divorced his first wife and took up with someone about 20 years younger. The smaller reasons were kicked off by a personal experience of mine, not a big deal, a mere offhand remark he delivered to the crowd at a science fiction convention. But I was there, so it made an impression. And the impression matched various interviews he gave and pronouncements he posted. That impression didn't forecast today's horror show but it goes with it well enough. As far as I can tell, to the best of my recollection, what happened was this. He lied. I'd say he had no big reason for doing it, and that all he wanted was to tickle the audience and give his reputation a minor bit of gloss. As I recall, he walked on stage and told us about the hour he'd just spent at the convention's daycare center. There, I remember him saying he and the kids had erected, quote, something mysterious and teetery known as a turkey tower, unquote. Bear with those quote marks. I recorded nothing, and it may be that Gaiman was, quote, wobbly and mysterious, unquote, or some other variation. The word, quote unquote, structure might have been in there. But I remember him saying that he and the kids had built a turkey tower. Turkey tower, maybe because he thinks of himself as a turkey, maybe? Let's see. And now back to Avi here. And from what's told, looks like he didn't. Either way, the scandal makes clear he doesn't belong around children any more than around women. Yeah, well, and we talked about this. I talked about this too, like when we covered the last article. The fact that, whether or not what he did was consensual with the women or not, still not a good look to expose little kids to such behavior. The UK Catholic Herald also addressed the scandal as part of topic involving Griswold versus Connecticut. So, and this is from that article, feminists who have expressed outrage over Gaiman's behavior have tended to focus only on quote-unquote power imbalances because they too are committed, for the most part, to quote-unquote rights of sexual freedom. If they are uneasy about the form this might take in the name of quote-unquote self-realization, they have only the fragile basis of lack of content to aid them in their condemnation. But what if the problem is that people can consent to acts which degrade them precisely because their bodies possess a nuptial meaning which is violated by such acts? Refusal to address the fact that our reproductive organs are, well, reproductive. They can unify us with someone of the opposite sex and speak to their paternal, maternal nature, honored through marital commitment. Means that, among other tragedies, vulnerable women will never be truly protected in the face of assertions of quote-unquote sexual freedoms by powerful men. Now, this is a Catholic publication, obviously. So there's where... As always, the real defense of people's dignity is to ask the deep question neglected by the U.S. judges in their dangerous pursuit of new quote-unquote freedoms, namely, what is it that is good about marriage? The reason consent is so important in the sexual realm is that the quote unquote marital act possesses a deep meaning with acts with parody, degrade, acts which parody, degrade, and insult marriage and marital sex are essentially harmful to us. Single or married, we are, quote, nuptial persons, unquote, whose sexuality is so precocious or so precious um, that we cannot take a holiday from the effort to humanize our desires, so they pay adequate respect to the person um, with whom we could engage in sexual relations. For what a person has a right to is love, and if that love takes the form of erotic love, what they deserve is marital commitment and its life affirming, quote unquote, unreserved expression. In the meantime, our elites, be they sexually liberationist or feminist, continue to promote a view of the world destructive of marriage. That good and human and divinely created institution. As mass pornography um, goes unchallenged by lawmakers, and our movie theaters celebrate BDSM as self-fulfillment in the form of the current film Baby Girl, starring Nicole Kidman. And let's see how Avi responds to this one here. And of course, I check to see if there's any comments or quotes there. No, we're still thinking. I already thought it rather laughable the film would star a woman who's well into her late 50s, or so, in something that looks like another older woman, younger man affair, which is getting hopelessly silly by now. But if the film comes within even miles of making sex look horrific, that's why I'd rather not buy tickets to see it. Even a writer at First Things, another religious affairs website, um, had what to say about gay men. So this from the First Things article here. Gaiman, once a vocal supporter of the Me Too movement, fits into that category of performative feminist whose commitment to the cause doesn't extend beyond social media platforms. I have always found such cheap piety to be deeply implausible. Not to mention the existence of ex-wives, too in Gaiman's case, is always a rather troubling sign. What do you think of their air whistle husbands' vocal? What do they think of their erstwhile husbands' vocal online advocacy for women's rights, and gynocracy, or gynocracy. The proof of a passionate commitment to respecting women is not some cost-free recitation of feminist cliches or on social media that garner congratulatory retweets or Instagram likes. It is how these men treat real women in real time. Ex-wives are likely expert commentators on such matters, something that applies to the famous, such as Gaiman, as much as to the unknown online wannabe. But setting aside his apparent hypocrisy, the garish allegations against Gaiman are, if true, the consequences of the logic of the sexual revolution, albeit rather extreme ones. That is, claim of consent sounds plausible, even if ultimately untenable. Speak to the cultural and speak to the cultural intuitions of our day, where we do not typically regard sexual acts as having intrinsic value. Further, if sex is primarily about self-directed physical or emotional satisfaction, then the others involved are necessarily turned into instruments for the achievement of such an end. They become things or objects for us only as far as they make one feel good. It is not a logic restricted to sexual matters. Ebenezer Scrooge viewed his clients not as people, but as entries in his ledger. Kind of bringing in the Christmas Carol connection there. It is the most dramatic form of a failing anthropology of the modern world, forced now to reduce philosophies of sex to databases over consent, and thus to defend the most obviously degrading behavior as the hilarious culmination of our freedom. And here's let me see here. We still have a little bit more to go here. As with a lot of these articles, they get pretty lengthy. All right, we just saw that. So here's Avi's responding to what we just read. A vital point to make is that if Gaiman's advocacies are superficial and didn't support Muslim women and girls whose lives were threatened by abusive husbands and families, then that too should make clear he wasn't sincere in his positions about protecting women's safety and dignity. In other words, another activist whose advocacy didn't extend beyond the superficial and refusal to take up another more challenging issues within that context. I'll be continuing here. Then, if anybody's wondering what'll happen with any remaining projects based on Gaiman's writings, Dark Horse has canceled an adaptation of Gaiman's Anansi Boys, which we, of course, looked at the other day. This might be the article, the previous article that that Avi's referring to. Dark Horse Comics have announced they have cut ties with Neil Gaiman and canceled all upcoming collaborations with the writer. The influential American publisher has had a long-standing relationship with Gaiman, having overseen adaptations of several of the author's fantasy titles, including American Gods and Norse mythology. Now, Dark Horse has posted on social media to make clear that they no longer wish to be associated with the author. Quote, Dark Horse takes seriously the allegations against Neil Gaiman, and we are no longer publishing his works, unquote. They wrote, quote, confirming that the Anansi Boys comic series and collected volumes have been canceled, unquote. Also from Gizmodo, which is another reference Avi is utilizing here. Mark Bernardin, who co-wrote the Anansi comic, revealed the book would be ending earlier this week. While he's incredibly proud, quote unquote, of the work he did with the artist Sean Martinborough, colorist Chris Sotomayor, and cover artist David Mack, he said it all, quote unquote, pales next to Gaiman's actions. Quote, Dark Horse will not release a trade, unquote, he wrote. Quote, my heart breaks for the survivors. Any pain seeing these books on the shelves might have created, unquote, have caused, unquote. After the initial allegations against Neil Gaiman received further reporting, Amazon announced that it would cap off his TV adaptation of Good Omens with a 90-minute special. At the time of writing, the streamer hasn't revealed what it intends to do about the Anansi Boys adaptation. Not only is Gaiman an executive producer on the upcoming show, he also wrote its pilot and 6th episode. Similarly, Netflix has been quiet for how it'll handle Sandman's second season, as have DC Comics and Marvel with the comics he previously wrote for them. And to finish this article off here, of course, finally, some common sense to be found from one comics publisher as much as a movie studio. So this is Avi speaking now, of course, to finish things off. Dark Horse made a wise decision, in parentheses, though still rather belatedly after a few months, smaller quote, considering how several years ago one of their former editors, Scott Alley, was accused of sexual misconduct and they were slow to fully part ways with him. But that leaves DC and Marvel's response to be heard from. And if they're going to make clear where they stand, it doesn't avail their already dismal image. I think Netflix would do well to just shelve the second Sandman season because chances are less people will want to view it at this point. And if airing it puts money in Gaiman's pockets, that's a valid reason to just drop it from the broadcasting schedule. So there we go with that article. As that article just finished up there, we're just past the hour mark here. We are because I did want to get a little over the hour mark, of course. We're going to go on to the other thing I wanted to talk about. I'll pull that up. Pull it up. Well, go from Wikipedia here to get the basic information. As I mentioned at the top of the show, former voice actor John Irwin, known for his work with Filmation, primarily as the voice, of course, He-Man, Prince Adam, and Beastman in He-Man and the Master of the Universe, passed away in late December, right around December 20th, a lot of people say. It was his passing was just announced today, but he died like about a month ago at the age of 88 in a retirement. So I'm going to read through his Wikipedia page here real quick to kind of give you guys kind of an idea of who he was. But for those of us who grew up in the 80s, you probably knew his voice all too well because it was all over Filmation stuff, particularly He-Man and She-Ra. So let's take a look at that. So John Lee Irwin, born December 5th, 1936, passed away December 20th, 2024, was an American voice actor best known for voicing He-Man, Reggie Mantle, and Morris the Cat. So here's his career. Irwin was the voice of He-Man in the Filmation productions He-Man the Masters of the Universe and She-Ra Princess Power that ran from 1983 to 1986. Due to the extreme cost-cutting by Filmation, the cast of voice actors was small, and producer Lou Scheimer actually performed the bulk of the character voices. Yes, Lou Scheimer had voiced a lot of the supporting characters, including, of course, in the He-Man series, Attack Track, King Randor, Orko, Trapjaw, Triclops, among many others. Irwin was also the voice of henchman character Beastman, would on occasion do the voices of supporting characters too, such as Webstore and Ramman. Yep. He was also like the Oracle in one episode. Although generally recognized for his work on He-Man, Irwin has many years of voice acting to his credit, including the voice of Reggie Mantle in Filmation's Archie cartoons. So, yeah, a lot of his work was through Filmation. And has provided voices for many productions, ranging from television advertisements to live-action movies since the 1960s. He was the voice of Morris the Cat for Nine Lives Cat Food in several television commercials. That's something I think most people didn't know. I knew his work. I knew his work from Filmation, but let's see. From 1959 to 1965, he starred as Teddy in the television western Rawhide. In 1989, his voice was heard as a radio newscaster in Back to the Future 2, and as a football announcer in the 2000 Disney movie Remember the Titans. He also did small spot roles in various Hanna-Barbera episodes for different shows, such as Hanna-Barbera's animated series The Thing, and others going uncredited. Personal life and death. So, Irwin had moved away from California in 2010, although in 2019, Alan Oppenheimer, who was one of the other guys who was involved in Filmation, of course, Alan Oppenheimer provided the voices of Man-at-Arms, Merman, among others in the 1983 Filmation series, stated he had recently visited Irwin in his retirement community in Thousand Oaks, California. And also, just to point something out too, Alan Oppenheimer is in his 90s, and I believe he's still alive. Let me take a quick peek at that. I believe he's still alive and like into his 90s. Yeah, 1930. Alan Oppenheimer is 94 right now, and he's still alive and kicking. So, Irwin died on December 20th, 2024, at his home in Camarillo, California, at the age of 88 from natural causes. His death was announced on January 31st, 2025. Now, why it took him a month to announce his death, I don't know. They don't say here. But even when I was talking to R.J. Carter earlier, we're talking about it earlier, and he had said that seemed it does seem like there are times when people are their deaths are not being announced till like sometime after it actually happens. Why that is, nobody knows. But anyways, and to look at some of his filmography. Include, of course, from his film work, including He-Man and She-Ra, The Secret of the Sword, and He-Man, Prince Adam, Beast, and Beastman. Skeletor's Revenge, which is a direct-to-video thing. I've never even seen that myself. Took, obviously, mentioned some of the other television, of course, Ride with Teddy, Reggie Mantle, and a lot of the Archie properties. He was a narrator for Here's Lucy. In the Sabrina the Teenage Witch show, he was, of course, Reggie Mantle, as well as Cousin Ambrose, Humphrey, and Hexter. He was in the Groovy Ghoulies, Archie's TV Funny. Again, a lot of work with Filmation. He was Casey Ballou in the ABC Weekend Special episode The Horse That Played Center Field. He was Ronald Radford III, Clumpley in Fred and Barney Meet the Thing. You know about his work, of course, on He-Man and She-Ra. He actually reprised his role as He-Man in a 2005 episode of Family Guy, Brian the Bachelor. So that episode. Oh, there we go with that. So what I do want to do real quick before we move on to the wrestling wrap up, I do want to do a moment of silence for John Owen. For those of us who remember him, when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s, hearing his voice on a number of the Filmation productions, including, of course, Archie with Reggie Mantle and, He-Man and Masters of the Universe and She-Ra with He-Man. So what I want to do now, of course, is I do want to just do a quick moment of silence, and we'll move on to the wrestling wrap-up. All right, thank you for that, guys. So now, with that being said, let's talk about and kind of get you all caught up on what's all going down in the world of wrestling. So first off, we're going to look back to last night, Ring of Honor and TNA from last night. As of course on first off on last night's Impact. Last night's Impact saw Cora Jade in her in-ring debut with TNA defeated Heian in just over 3 minutes. Just give me a sec here. Do something here. Apparently, I was logged out of this site for some reason. All right, there we go with that. Brian Myers of the System, with of course Alicia Edwards, Eddie Edwards, JDC, and Moose all in his corner, defeated Leon Slater in just under 10 minutes. In a match, Mustafa Ali defeated Laredo Kid. In a tag team match that ended in a no contest, Josh Alexander and Eric Young went to a no contest with Northern Armory of Judas Icarus and Travis Williams. NXT's Wes Lee with Tyreek Igwe and Tyson DuPont defeated Ace Austin. And in a tag team match, the Nemeth brothers, Nick and Ryan Nemeth, defeated First Class of AJ Francis and Casey Navarro. So that all happened on last night's Impact. So now let's go over to let's go over to the Ring of Honor. Look back at what happened on Honor Club last night, the 101st episode of Honor Club, with Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccaboni doing the commentary there. Of course, Tom Hannafin and Matthew Raywalt did the commentary on Impact. Sammy in the opening match saw Sammy Guevara, one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion, Sammy Guevara, defeat Aaron Solo. Queen Aminata defeated Allison Kay. In a Ring of Honor World Television Title Proving Ground match, Lee Johnson earned a title shot by going to a time limit draw with Commander. Serpentico defeated Brandon Cutler in a singles match. In a match in a from the vault kind of match for the Ring of Honor World Television title, Samoa Joe defeated Tony Deppen, going back to a show that was taped back in February 2023. Blake Christian defeated Evil Uno of Dark Order with the remnants of Dark Order in his corner. And then in a match for the Ring of Honor Women's World title, Red Velvet retained over Layla Gray. So that all happened on last night's Ring of Honor. So as we now get ready, of course, to move on to the next, moving on to tonight. So what's going on tonight here? Now, as we look ahead to tonight's SmackDown, as this will be the go home SmackDown before tomorrow night's Royal Rumble, and then we'll look at that as well. On tonight's SmackDown, the go home SmackDown before tomorrow night's Royal Rumble, happening in the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. Tonight's show, let's see, in an eight tag team. Okay, because in an 8-man tag team match, current SmackDown Tag Team Champions DIY of Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano team up with Pretty Deadly, Elton Prince, and Kit Wilson to take on Los Garza's Angel Umberto and the Motor City Machine Guns of Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley. Jimmy Uso takes on Carmelo Hayes in a singles match. Naomi with Bianca with one half of the women's tag team champion, Naomi with Bianca Belair with her tag team partner in her corner, takes on Liv Morgan in a one-on-one match with Raquel Rodriguez in her corner. And in the main event, slated for tonight's show, we'll see Chelsea Green with Piper Niven in her corner, defending the Women's United States title against Michin. And another match between these two, continuing their feud. So now, as we look ahead to tomorrow night's, Royal Rumble, being held at the Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis tomorrow night. Already slated for, there are 4 matches thus far slated for the show. In a match for the WWE Tag Team titles, in a best 2 out of 3 match, DIY of Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano are defending the titles against the Motor City Machine Guns of Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley. And then in a ladder match for the WWE for the WWE Universal and the Wing Eagle belt, Cody Rhodes will be taking on Kevin Owens. And then the two Royal Rumble, the men's. So now, as of now, announced on the men's side for the Royal Rumble include, and still with more names to be added, include Shinsuke Nakamura, CM Punk, Rey Mysterio, John Cena, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, LA Knight, Jey Uso, Roman Reigns, Penta, Chad Gable, Carmelo Hayes, Intercontinental Champion Braun Breaker, and Logan Paul. On the women's side, you have one half of the women's tag team champions, Naomi, along with Bayley, Io Sky, Charlotte Flair making her in-ring return from injury, Nia Jax, Liv Morgan, the other half of the women's tag team champion, Bianca Belair, Raquel Rodriguez, women's Intercontinental Champion Lyra Valkyrie, and Ivy Nile. So now, with that being said, of course, now let's look ahead to tomorrow night. To tomorrow night's Collision. Let's see what's on tap for tonight's Collision, with, of course, 2 weeks to go before their next big event in Brisbane, Australia, Grand Slam. Roosh with Dralistico and Beast Mordos in his corner will be taking on Max Caster. Hook and Samoa Joe take on Patriarchy members of Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne with Christian Cage in their corner. The Outrunners of Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum take on the Learning Tree duo of Chris Jericho and Brian Keith with Big Bill in their corner. In a Mid-South tag team fight, FTR, Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler take on the Death Riders of John Moxley and Wheeler Yuta. This, of course, being held at the Probst Arena at the Von Braun Center in Huntsville, Alabama, which explains a lot. Megan Bayne takes on Hyena Hera, a singles match. Another women's singles match, Taya Valkyrie takes on Harley Cameron. And in the main event, we'll see for the TNT title, a three-way match for the TNT title. Daniel Garcia with Matt Menard in his corner will be defending the title against the Undisputed Era's Kyle Riley and Shane Taylor Promotions Lee Moriarty with Shane Taylor in his corner. So that's all I got for the wrestling wrap-up for you guys. But with that all that being said, today is Friday, January 31st, the last day of January. So now we're going to take a look back at this day in Niche history. So let me just review here real quick. 2007, 2010, 2015, and 2015. All right. All right. So, anyways, with that being said, let's get back to this. Oh, first off, we're going to head back to 2007, 18 years ago today. On this date, 18 years ago today, back in 2007, the 100th issue of Usagi Yojimbo, the 100th issue of Dark Horse's Usagi Yojimbo went on sale on this date back in 2007, 18 years ago, from their Maverick imprint. The story was the Stan Sakai Celebrity Roast. The book was 30 pages. It sold for $3.50. Well, 32 pages altogether. So on this date, 18 years ago, the 100th issue of Usagi Yojimbo from Dark Horse's Maverick imprint went on sale on this date 18 years ago, back in 2007. So now, as we prepare to move on to the next piece of niche history, moving ahead to 2010 on this date 15 years ago today. In 2010, speaking, of course, of the Royal Rumble, on this date, WWE held its Royal Rumble event from the Phillips Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. The show opened up with Christian retaining the ECW championship over Ezekiel Jackson. The Miz retained the United States championship over MVP. Sheamus retained the WWE championship over Randy Orton via disqualification. Mickie Jones defeated Michelle McCool to become the new WWE Women's Champion. The Undertaker defeated Rey Mysterio to retain the World Heavyweight title. And in the Royal Rumble itself, Edge won the Royal Rumble, last eliminating John Cena. So that on this date, 15 years ago today, WWE held the Royal Rumble in the Phillips Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. Now moving on to the next piece of niche history here. Move ahead to 2015. On this day in 2015, from Royce Hall from UCLA's Royce Hall, the 42nd annual Annie Awards, honoring excellence in the field of animation of 2014, took place on this date back in 2015. 2015, the 42nd annual Annie Awards. This year also introduced the category Best Character Animation in a Video Game. Of course, How to Train Your Dragon 2 ended up being the big winner, as it was voted Best Animated Feature, Best Direction by Dean Dubois. It had the most awards. Now, the most nominations came from the Box Trolls. So, 10 years ago today, the 42nd Annual Annie Awards, honoring excellence in the field of animation for 2014. So, and finally, on this date in 2015, it's just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As also on this date in 2015, Sanzigan's Arpeggio Blue Steel Ars Nova DC premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2015. So 10 years ago today in Japan, Sanzigan's Arpeggio of Blue Steel Ars Nova DC premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in the year 2015. So with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the show. We'll be back here on Sunday as RJ Carter will be joining me as my co-host. We'll be looking back at comics that went on sale from comics that went on in April of 1940. Excuse me, there. From Prize Comics, we'll be looking at Prize Comics Volume 1, Issue 4. Looking at such features as Power Nelson, Jupiter the Master Magician, Black Owl, and Storm Curtis. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here on Sunday. Bye.